Sorry, that's a little jarring. Just had to quit right in the middle of that banger. And then it's just me and my voice. The worst. Okay, what do we got? We got Nick. Magenta. Hey, everybody. Yes, Nightbot. ZBrush 2021.7 is available. And you can see that's what I'm using today. Cool. ZBrush Material IDs or monthly subscription. I have Perpetual. I've had Perpetual for 20 years or something like that. Something ridiculous like that. I remember, oops, OBS is messing me up. Way back in the day, watching, I think it was ZBrush 2.5, there was a fish. And this fish, somebody was making a fish with spines. And this is back in the day when I was NURBS patch modeling faces. And I was like, what is this? What is this ZBrush? This was 100 years ago today. Cool, hey everybody. I don't really have I don't have a huge agenda today. However, first I'm gonna check my levels. How are we doing? Oh yeah, I mean, if anybody's thinking this is too quiet, it's hitting right about here, right where I want it. So I don't know what to tell you. Hello from Minnesota and Australia. We're running the gamut today. Well, so if you all missed it, let me go to the Pixelogic thing real quick. So we're gonna go to Stream, Pavlovich Workshop. So what we're doing today is a Pavlovich Workshop. If you want to see more of these episodes that we've done in the past that go like, again, about 100 years ago, all the way here to broadcast number 1, you can check them all out here, any previous stuff. If you like what I do, if you don't, well then don't bother. There's a lot more people right here in the Pixelogic channel. However, the one thing I do want to bring up is, in case you completely missed it, the ZBrush 2021.7 special event with Paul and I. Welcome everybody. It starts at 317 seconds in apparently. I'll go ahead and copy this so you can check that out. And this goes over a bunch of the new features. Bevel arc, bevel flat brushes, polygroup mask changed, knife brush, adjust last stroke, interpolate, mirror, flip, polypaint masking, and geometry stager. Stuff that we all went over. So it's all in there. Check it out. There's some really fun stuff in there. And we use this to demo. Well, in fact, if you were interested, kind of, I didn't go into the making of this bison that much, or buffalo, whatever you decide. However, on my channel here, we did a live stream, kind of the making of that entire scene. So I go into, oops, this is all just, come on, sorry. not ready to click buttons yet this morning. Basically in Maya, taking everything from ZBrush, baking it out, throwing it through Substance Painter, dropping it into Maya, setting up the Human IK rig, and then retargeting mocap data to those little tin can dudes, and setting up cameras. Why I picked the camera angles I did, because my animation was so terrible, and I was hiding all the inadequacy, trying to hide the inadequacies of my animation. I don't know that I really succeeded there. And so that was all that set up, and then the parenting setup for the animation for the teaser, and then a little bit of painter work. Oh, actually a little bit of Vegas Pro work, Boris effects taken through here, and talking about the different camera effects and stuff that I was doing. So that's kind of what we touched on in last time's live streams. If you're interested in that type of thing, we talk about that here. So I'll go ahead and share this for you, just in case you wanted to know a little bit of under the hood making of behind the scenes. Of course, cool. Mr. Decimate, good to cover 27 hard surfaces. Yeah, and that's really fun stuff. Thanks for showing up. And yeah, so that's it. And you know, if we kind of break this thing down, so here's the hood right here, and you're going to see this hood is made up. Let's turn off perspective. This hood is made up of a bunch of different panels, and essentially all this was it started out as a ZeeZoo. So if we go in here and we go into project, I think, mannequin, no, ZeeZoo right here. I basically went through here and was like, what would make a cool bison thing? And in fact, now that I think about it, where I even got this idea, I guess I can link his channel here. Let me see. He's following. Give me a second. I don't have this right offhand. Actually, I know where it is, but oh, I found it. So in here in Alexander's ArtStation page, go ahead and link this here. I had a lot of really cool animals, dinosaurs, but also animals. So like, you know, for the spiders, I started doing a praying mantis from the ZeeZoo, and I would have like a bunch of really intricate gears and like clock, you know, parts and stuff like that, really cool small things. And then, you know, for the big old dinosaurs, a little bit heavier, little tanks and a little flamethrower and stuff like that. So I went a little more this route, but if you want to see more cool animals and stuff, that's basically where I got the idea. If you could draw and do 3D equally good, would you choose drawing comics or doing 3D professionally? That's a good question. I'm always fascinated by drawing. That's what I grew up on. But then I'm also fascinated by 3D because that's also kind of what I grew up on. Jurassic Park played a huge role in why I decided to get into 3D. I thought that was the coolest thing. And the Frighteners was also a cool one. That was another early one that really kind of shaped me a little bit. I mean, obviously Star Wars and stuff like that, but CG 3D, the biggest thing for me was probably Jurassic Park. Seeing that and going, oh wow, you could, what are they doing exactly? That was really interesting to me. Can you share the hotkeys for grow and hide the selection? Thanks. Yeah, that's Control-Shift-X and Control-Shift-S. So, for example, and I use this all the time, especially, I guess kind of especially when I'm doing hard surface stuff. So I've got things, this is all kind of split out. You're going to see this is 172 subtools in here, so I don't necessarily have to do a ton of grow and hide selections. However, if I ever did have something like this and I'm like, okay, you know what? I want to grab, Control-Shift-Select Lasso. I want to grab all these, or, you know, I want to grab these front three. I don't even have to be that careful because I can just grab a little piece of this one and then do Control-Shift-A, and that's going to be under the visibility menu, grow all. So if I'm ever trying to grab an entire piece of something and it's mixed in with a bunch of other stuff, all I got to do is just grab a little piece of it and then Control-Shift-A, and that'll grab it. Of course, that's a really bad example. I'm trying to see if there's, you know what I could do? It would be something like, if I was to go down here to maybe structure, and I'm going to say, so I have a folder here with a bunch of stuff in it. I'm going to say merge folder, and that's going to put a little merged thing underneath it. So now I got a bunch of stuff all stuck together, and it's like, you know what? I just want one little piece. Well, some of these little pieces might have multiple polygroups here, you know, and even these polygroups share. So if you select the polygroup, Control-Shift-Tap, you can Control-Shift-X to shrink, or I'm sorry, to grow, expand, and then Control-Shift-S to shrink. And that's also useful for doing edge ring expansion. And also recently for me was useful for doing cleanup, some scan data cleanup. But anyway, so, you know, we have a polygroup here. You can do, or here's an even better one. Here's like a little hard surface thing, right? Nice edge rings, Control-Shift-X, expand that out. And there you go. And then if you wanted to polygroup these things, or Control-Shift-S to shrink, that would shrink it down. Now, if you can do Control-Shift-A, that's going to do all the verts that are, let me go ahead and change this material here. That's going to grab all the verts that are connected. So if you got a bunch of stuff in here and it's like, I just want to grab, you know, this little piece in here and it's got separate polygroups and all these, shares all these polygroups, don't worry about that. Just grab a little piece of it with your lasso or your Control down, Control-Shift and do Select Lasso or Select Rectangle. Grab a little piece, Control-Shift-A. I'll go ahead and do a split hidden in my custom menu, which for y'all will be right underneath the Subtool split. There you go. So now that's all separated out into its own subtool here. And you know what? I want to try this. Let's go down here. Let's do this. So there is a new thing in here. So we noticed that it was sharing a polygroup with that other one. So let's merge this back down. So there is a polygroups regroups. So if I hold down Control-Shift, you're going to see, and then I can do Control-Shift-A. You know, this blue is sharing that blue. However, what we can do is maybe we want to keep all these separate. Here's another thing too. If you have Select Lasso selected, that's going to select an edge ring. So if we wanted to go through here and select this edge ring, we can. It can kind of throw you off a little bit if you're accidentally selecting edge rings in here instead of the entire mesh. Just switch over to Select Rectangle, and that's going to select that whole polygroup for you. But anyway, Control-Shift-A, let's go ahead and say split hidden. So if we go down here to polygroups and we do regroup visible. It's going to maintain your polygroup selection, but then give it different polygroups so that this way it'll change polygroups here. So if we go through here and I'm going to say, you know what, let's hide just this side here, and we're going to say regroup visible. Again, still the same polygroup selections, they're just different colors now, so now these don't overlap. Oh, this side, I didn't grab this side. However, what I can do is just do a quick deformation mirror, geometry modify, topology mirror, and weld. For you all, or if you're new to ZBrush, deformation mirror across the x-axis to throw it on the negative x-axis, because everything, if it's on both sides, it's going to mirror negative to positive, and then just do a geometry modify topology and mirror and weld. And now you can see why I have them right next to each other in my custom menu instead of going over here and digging around. We did a little bit of drawing last time too. Maybe we'll do some drawing today. That was fun. What if I cannot draw but want to learn ZBrush? Can I do it, and how? Yeah, I mean I don't draw very well, but you know, you don't have to. And I would say there's a lot of 3D artists who don't necessarily draw that much, and if you don't draw a lot, you're not going to be good automatically. And even if you do 3D, this is something we talked about last time, where basically, I guess I can load these up here. Let's see, recording, Eden here, and let's see, recording. Sorry. And the reason I'm bringing this up is just because, you know, we've used it recently. I'm going to go in here to render properties, and I'm going to turn on transparent. So when I go in here, I'm going to turn on polyframe. And if I want to render this, let's go ahead and turn off. I mean, you can, if you leave floor turned on and you hit BPR render, it'll render out a shadow on the floor. If you don't need that, then you just turn off floor. So basically, this was taken from, I think, a 1024 scan data skull that I had, and then I went through and rebuilt it with a simplified method using, you know, if you're taking one of Scott Eaton's classes, he goes through, you know, a bunch of different ways to create skulls. So if you're interested in that, then absolutely, I would say take his class. And that's basically where this is from. It's just a simplified construction of that skull. And then I use this as a cheat sheet. So while I'm learning how to draw, what I'll do is I'll turn on polyframe, I'll turn off line, and by draw I just mean construct in 2D. And then you can turn on perspective, and then as you want to, you can hit BPR. And because I turn transparency on for this selected subtool, and if you want to know where that is, so any subtool you select, so let's say I alt tap this jaw, I go down here to display properties, and this is where I usually double my geometry or flip it. I can go down here to BPR settings and then just turn on transparent shading. As soon as you turn that on, if you haven't turned it on yet, it'll yell at you and say, hey, do you want to turn on transparency underneath the render properties transparent? And now when you do that, anything you've labeled as transparent shading will show up transparent in your render. So if you turn that off and then BPR render, it'll be non-transparent. And the reason I turned it on for the skull, or this little egg shape here, is so that I can see the construction lines go all the way through, so I can get better at, you know, constructing in the round. So if I'm matching a skull or a face, you know, if I just had a picture of somebody, let me see, not Facebook. Let me just find an image here while that's loading up. Sorry. Just fine. Don't know why this is difficult. Just looking for all right, I hope this guy isn't like a serial killer or something, but okay, actually I found, okay, this will work. So so we've got a 3/4 head here. So let's say I'm going to right click and I'm going to say copy image, control and enter, control paste. So this is something you can do. Let's do this. Let's go image canvas size, and we'll make this, I don't know, 800 by 800. So say I want to draw, and I want to use 3D as a tool for, you know, drawing and stuff, and I want to construct the head using my little cheat sheet that I have. So I'm going to go through here, and I'm going to maybe scale this up a little bit. And while I'm in here, if I'm in ZBrush and I got this set up and I have perspective turned on, I'm not going to bother. If you wanted to like really get specific, you can go in here to your camera settings underneath the draw menu and set your focal length. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here to see through. Can you see that? It's just out of view of your screen. It's right. So follow my arrow way up here, boop, just above the help menu. There's a see-through slider. And if you take that slider and you drag it to the right, you can have ZBrush be see-through. So as I'm going through here, I can go through and I can actually match this little cheat sheet skull, you know, the features over here, and I can match it. So then I can go back up here and then turn see-through down to 0, hit BPR render. Let's go into Skin Shader for Material Settings. That's what I have selected here. So underneath Material Modifiers, we're going to go down here to Diffuse of 1, just to brighten it up just a bit. And then I can go in here, Windows Shift S, just grab a little Windows snippet, whatever that program's called they have built in, and then just paste that in here. So now I can use this, or I can do Control N, Enter, Control Paste, so I can have this as a separate window if I wanted. Up to you. And there we go. And then we can, you know, knock this down. And then as I'm, you know, constructing something in here, let's see, here, good enough. There we go. So now we're kind of matching. And again, if I would say, depending on how you learn, you know, the Scott Eaton, he has a human anatomy course and a portraiture course, and that's where this is from. But you can use this, and this was made for the class, but it wasn't like a requirement or anything, just something I use so I can kind of keep myself sane, or at least, like, you know, answering questions. And honestly, like, even having this here, what I would try to do first is not have it here, and I would go through and, you know, try to construct the skull based on what I had learned, and then I would go through and basically correct myself. And I would do that also with this. So basically I would try first, and then I would go back through with my cheat object and then correct myself using, you know, the actual, you know, object here. And this is where, you know, all the stuff goes on here. So basically, as I was going through the videos, I would go through and just reconstruct. This is from a scan data head as well. So if I open up this, you know, here's a scan. Oh, let's go ahead and turn this back down. Here's a scan data head, and peel the skin off. And then here's all the other stuff all labeled in here as to what that's from. So I would, you know, use this again, the exact same method, go through here and do see-through, and then be like, okay, I tried to construct based on what I knew, and then I can use this as my cheat sheet to go through and correct what I've done. But again, it's all about, you know, kind of practicing, and again, just because you do 3D doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a great 2D artist or be able to construct, you know, a 3D. You know, here's the orbit right in here, and then here's where the eyeball is going to kind of favor. And boy, I'm a little rusty drawing, obviously, and then the temporal line and stuff like that. But anyways, that's just because, again, 3D is an awesome tool to help you do 2D, and then 2D is an awesome tool to help you think and ideate outside of the 3D space. So if you ever feel like you're like, I'm getting nowhere in ZBrush, force yourself to like take a screenshot, throw it into Photoshop, and then play around with it just from a lockdown view, and then vice versa. If you're ever like, hey, you know what, I'm having a real hard time with this, throw together some primitives in ZBrush, and then use that see-through to kind of, you know, you use that as a tool in order to kind of figure out construction in 2D. They both help each other, I think. Good morning, Mike. Said I can only stick around for you. I want to pop and say, hey, yes, thank you, John. Pop in and say hell. I like that better. Let's make that the new thing. Simple Robot finally helped me get to, the ZModeler workflow. Excellent. Yeah, the ZModeler is another really fun one. A ton of this. In fact, if you watch the props, so we have, I'm going to go to this is a little bit easier to look at here. Let's kill that. And I guess I closed it. So in here, if you're ever on my ArtStation page and you want to see like the new features, I usually call them out. Like here's ZBrush 2021.7, what's new. And then I'll also have demo stuff. If you go to the making of the props section here, most of this is just simple ZModeler. I use a little bit of the new features, arc and knife tool, obviously, but a lot of these shapes and how they're created is just straight up ZModeler. There's a little bit of mesh fusion in there, but yeah, ZModeler's, for me, I mean, maybe for you, surprisingly robust, but a lot of different stuff. In fact, in the last live stream, we recreated some of these things really quickly. Just having fun, you know, going through a ZModeler and making some little props. So if we may do that today, I have a Ninja Turtle scene that I'm kind of plinking away at in the background. Cool, thank you, Sprecko. Glad the videos are helping out. Do you use project primitives for the humps? You know, I didn't. I dragged alphas on those, but you know what? That would have been a good one too. You know, if you've got those basic shapes, you know, from the bison here, or you know what, we can just pick mechanical chihuahua and go through here, and it's like, okay, if we do A for adaptive skin, let's go ahead and switch back over to Skin Shader 4, and then A to turn off adaptive skin. That's going to be down here. So these are ZSpheres, and these are kind of special ZSpheres in that if we go down here to, so here's my topology, and then here's my adaptive skin. So you're going to see there's use classic skinning turned on, and then there's a local and connector mesh that are different than just straight up ZSpheres. So if you ever wanted to make changes to any of these, you can go through here and you can change the tail, or you can pose the legs out. And I'm just using rotate, so you can rotate the joints themselves or the bones interconnecting these things. You know, tilt the head or whatever you want to do. You can also use move, W, so you can kind of go through here and do whatever you want to with these things. Once you're done with that, you can say make adaptive skin, and that preview for that is just tapping A and then letting go of A. And that'll shoot out a skinned ZSphere, and then this is your actual geometry. And from this point here, this is where, okay, so when we were talking earlier about Control-Shift-A for visibility grow all, that's exactly what I did here. Just grab all the head pieces here, Control-Shift-A. Oh, I didn't want that one, Control-Shift-Alt, Control-Shift-Drag to invert that selection, Control-Shift-A, Control-Shift-Drag again, and then split. That sounds weird, but once you've been doing that for a while, it's pretty simple. You know, you just go through here and really quickly, and then have a custom menu up here, my path custom, and then I just hit a hotkey for that. You can assign a hotkey to anything, most anything in the ZBrush interface. Hold down Control Alt and tap. You know, here's macro. Control Alt tap macro. Assign Alt M to that hotkey. Assigned it successfully. So now if I ever need the macro menu real quick, I can just hit that hotkey. And then there we go. There's the menu. So again, for my path custom assigned to Alt A, so I have access to it really quickly. And then really quickly, I can do. We're on ZSpheres. Or no, we're not on ZSpheres. Here, Control Shift A, split hidden. We have subdivisions. So when when we made the adaptive skin, I didn't go down here and check that our density was set to 2. So we set it to 1. It wouldn't subdivide anything, but that's okay. We can just go down here and we can say delete lower, and then we can say split hidden. Then we can alt tap the body, go in here and be like, you know what, I don't need this one. Control Shift A, split. Or, you know, if I want the pink here, I just grab a little piece of this one, Control Shift A, and now these are all full polygroups, right? So now I can just go in here to select rectangle, say delete hidden. So that's basically how I went through and divided up my bison. Now, how I made the humps was I had the body essentially. It's kind of split out. Let's go ahead and get rid of these two here. There we go. So we go ahead and split this off. And I have these shapes here. And let's say, you know, I want a big piece of back armor and a big piece of chest armor, but I don't need like these individual pieces. They're not doing much for me right now. So probably what I did, if I was a betting man, I probably Dynamesh this. Another alternative, you can hit W, go in here, and you can do a remesh by union. And that's going to do a Boolean operation. So whatever you see on your screen here or in the subtool, we'll go ahead and Boolean these together. So now they're all stuck together. And you could ZRemesh this, so you can see how it kind of mangled my geometry. Well, if you go down here to geometry and you wanted to keep these polygroups for some reason, ZRemesher, adaptive size down to 0 to give us nice even quads. The higher up this is, the more it's going to want to build in surface deviation. I'm going to take that down to 0 for nice, just even quads. Again, if I want to keep my polygroups, I can say keep my polygroups. I don't need to smooth the groups, I don't think. These get a little bit ratty in here, so maybe I'll keep, you know what, I'll keep smooth groups up at 1 for now. And then the target polygon count of 5, I'm just going to do half. So we get, you know, pretty low res, have ZRemesh do some heavy lifting for me. It smoothed the lines out. Now that my lines are smooth, I'm going to go ahead and take that smooth groups down to 0 because it's going to keep smoothing the lines between my mesh, and I don't necessarily want that. So now I can just keep hitting half and keep going lower and lower and lower. And now at this point, if it's like, hey, you know what, I want these to be separate panels, I can go down here to what? Edge loop. And there's panel loops in here. So we can say, you know, I'm going to take polish down to 0, and just because they're already pretty clean, right? Thickness up. Pop in panel loops, and you can change your bevel profiles and stuff like that. You can just make these into their own. If you don't want them to elevate out when I click panel loops, you can drop this elevation to -100 and it'll stay on the inside. And we keep using this, Control-Shift-Tap, Control-Shift-A to visibility grow all, and you're going to see that's what you're getting as these panels, and they're all cut in. You know, you have basics of panel loops, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops around here. This is the bevel profile, so that's the shape it's making, and it's giving you an inside poly group. And this is another one too, where if I ever wanted to, let's pop these ends off here. So these, you know what, these would be a good opportunity for regroup visible. Let's go ahead and turn off for here. So if I go down here again, one more time, poly groups, let's get rid of this one. I'm gonna say regroup visible, just so I can have this as its own separate thing, and then this piece here, Control-Shift-A. So these are my plugs on either end. You know what? Geometry modified topology, delete hidden. So now we have all these things. They're all different panels, and if I wanted to, for some reason, all the inside panels get the same poly group here, except for the one I regrouped. So I can grab these. I can do Control-Shift, just like we were talking about earlier, Control-Shift-X to expand. There we go. And now it's starting to get into the top poly groups here. So you can go here. We know we have 5 loops, right? Oops, here. There we go. Expand 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we can Control-Shift drag, and now we have all the outside things. Again, we regrouped this one, so it's not going to fit within that trick. So in this case, we'd have to go Control-Shift-Alt, Control-Shift-A. Oops. Oh yeah, these are all stuck together. I would probably split that out to its own subtool. Sorry. Not a great demo because I regrouped that one, but I probably could have just done that manually too. If you ever wanted to regroup something manually, it's basically, I'm going to take this one here, let's say this one, and this one had the same poly group. I could say, get rid of all this, and then, or I could just take this and get rid of anything else that I wanted, hit Control W, visibility, group visible, and then I'd be good to go. Sorry, that was probably confusing. Is a transparent shader a new feature of the new Visual 21.7, or did it already exist? Where do I find it in 2021.6? Say exact same place. No, that's not. That's old. That's old. That's old news. So it's underneath render properties. You have to make sure that transparency is, there it is, transparent button is turned on, and then you have to have something selected. Your subtool, it's by subtool. So it's not going to make everything transparent. It's subtool specific. So you need to go down here again to display properties and then say transparent should be, yeah, yes, and then BPR render, and then that'll be transparent. So when we turn this off, you'll be able to see through it. I'm enjoying your tutorial. Thank you, M. Chin. Looking to make character for games and wondered what the process for UV and low poly mesh from high poly mesh would be. How many quads? Depends on the game you're making. If it's something for mobile, 50. If it's something for, you know, a fighting game with 2 things on the screen, 200,000. But yeah, production and stuff that goes into a whole lot of nonsense. That's another thing too that probably everybody will be sad to hear. All this in here, these meshes. So these tin can guys, I made those literally like I think 5 years ago on a live stream. Like if you dig back through my live streams, you'll see the making of these tin can guys again ages ago. They were just hanging around. I was like, oh, you know what? Those would work for this type of model that I did. So happy accident there. However, all this geometry here, I guess I can, you know, let me pop this open real quick. I'll show you. Maybe thinking, wow, you know, you went through and you retopologized this and got great bakes, right? Wrong. Let's see, file, recent Buffalo. essentially what I did was I went through in ZBrush, I decimated it down, threw it into Maya, did auto UVs. You could use UV Master in ZBrush to do this. And then I threw it all into Substance Painter and then just baked it out. Did I not open? Oh, you know what? I changed the folder. I forgot. Here, there it is. Give it a second. Just going to show you the wires here. So let this all load in, all the textures and stuff. Another thing too to consider is, you know, I on the license plate here, for example, I went through and I modeled this in and baked it out. However, if I wanted to change it, I'd kind of be in trouble. Go ahead and turn that off. Yeah. You know, so sometimes to be a little less destructive, instead of modeling in ZBrush, what I'll do is I'll just go through here and stamp it on. So for example, under the accessories here, you can see we got these letters and the sticker and stuff, all that's put on later. So if I ever needed to go through here and change this, let's see, license plate, sorry, these are not terribly organized in here. I apologize. There's the registration sticker. Sorry, let this load in. I think that's what that was. There you go. Okay, so here's the license text here. Oh, that's just the license here. Let's see, paint, base metal. Oh, paint height. There we go. So you're going to see this stuff here. It looks modeled in, but it's really not. It's just a height stamp on here. So this allows me to go in after the fact. Instead of rebaking everything from scratch, if I change my mind, I can go in here and I can say, you know what, if it's not going to break the silhouette, just go through here and I can punch it in, or I can punch it out less. It's all just a little bit less destructive, a little bit easier to work with. So something to consider when you're doing your stuff in ZBrush is, am I going to end up texturing this? And if so, you know, do I want to leave that alone? So here you can kind of see on the insides here. But what I'm getting at essentially is, yes, this is game res and it has UVs. However, if we go in here to 2D only, you're going to see it's just auto UV'd. And then if I go in here to, let's say 3D only, and we'll go in here, I think it's under this, show mesh wireframe, it's literally just decimated mesh. So decimated down, auto UV'd, baked high to low. Seriously nothing fancy going on here, but it got the job done, and I only had like a couple hours to do it. So instead of spending weeks manually retopologizing everything as needed, it took me hours instead, and that's the name of the game sometimes. If I miss anything, I apologize. Just shut it back out. Cool. Where that question was bothering me the last past 2 weeks, could find an answer to. When I select circle shape alpha, and when I go to alpha modify, subvertices one horizontal turn. The scale is not appropriate, is squished. Yeah, I think what it's doing, so if I, for example, so we have our armor here, right? Well, one thing I was going to do was way back here before we started doing panel loops, before I got sidetracked here, sorry. So I basically went through, and then we went through and ZRemesh this result. And you don't even have to, like for what I'm going to do, we'll go through here and we'll do the knife curve. Knife curve is awesome. By the way, this is the one where you can go through and you can slice, and instead of it being like, you know, filling the hole and giving you that kind of swoopy closed holes, it goes through and gives you beautiful sliced, actually pretty good geometry here. And if you want to ZRemesh this, you know, obviously feel free. So that's essentially what I did. In this case, for the bison, what I ended up doing instead of using knife was slice. So I went through here and was like, okay, you know, I want this armor to kind of maybe swoop down. So I'm going to alt tap. Okay. So if you're new to ZBrush, anything with a curve assigned to it, hold down Control Shift, drag out a line, and then let go of, oops, here's this thing. If you tap Control once, it'll go into visibility. If you ever wanted to switch to visibility temporarily, tap Control to go back to slice. The what am I thinking of? This is the space bar. You can let go of Control Shift after you dragged it out. Don't let up on your pin. Space bar to move this around, and then you can Alt tap twice to do an angle cut, and then Alt tap once to do kind of a Bezier curve. So you can kind of Bezier curve up and then slice this through. So I basically use this to kind of go through here and divide up my armor for my top, and then maybe for my bottom here, we'll go up and around like so. And then if I don't need anything else, I can just take this one here and then Control Shift drag, delete hidden. Again, intro to ZBrush. If you're brand new to ZBrush and you're like, you're going too fast, what are you doing? This is a live stream. It's not an intro to ZBrush course. However, if you're really into intro to ZBrush stuff, I'll drop you some links. We have new and updated intro to ZBrush that I had hanging around. And then, where's my other one? Well, here. You can, if you're brand new to ZBrush, this is a decent one. There's also, if you have ArtStation Learning has an intro to ZBrush course that I did. It's like 16 hours long. And then there's also ZBrush for Concept and Ideation. The first unit is free on YouTube, and it's basically an intro to ZBrush course as well. So if this ever loads, there we go. I'll just link it here. So there's like 57 videos right here. So if you're wondering like what the heck I'm talking about, go there first and then come back to this. So again, we have this here. So if I have two different armor plates, Control Shift A, and we'll go ahead and say split hidden, geometry modify topology split hidden, and then I'll just do a ZRemesh same, keep groups we can turn off. And then boom, we have nice new geometry. And I can go through here and, I could use panel loops. Probably what I'd end up doing in this case is like QMesh, polygroup all, or extrude polygroup all. That was my ZModeler brush. Hover over a face with BZM. I'm in ZModeler now. I went through and manually gave this thickness. If I wanted to pull in a panel or want to make these thicker, I can go to the inside and then just hold down Shift while I'm QMeshing, and then I can go in here and I can say, insert. If I do insert multiple edge loops, I can put a line right down the middle, and then I can go through here and I can say Bevel, edge loop complete, and then we can, we'll say Inset, polygroup all, or polygroup island might be a little bit safer, but go through here, we'll do another QMesh polygroup all, hold down Shift, and we'll pull along those normals or push in along those normals. And then if I want to go through here and say, D for dynamic, that's going to give us a dynamic preview. So it'll preview what it would look like smooth, essentially. But then we can do Shift D to turn that off, or just turn off that preview basically. So D to turn it on, and then it's kind of melting everything. So we can go back in here to our creases, and we can say crease PGs. Those will crease our Paul Gabries or our poly groups, and then now those are nice and creased. There's a little bit more to that, but again, if you want to kind of punch through here and then do another crease PG, and then you're going to see this gives us a very, let's turn this back over here. This gives us a very sharp result on those edges. So you can say, crease level of 3 here, and then smooth subdiv of 4, and now it'll give us, it'll basically crease, it'll subdivide up 3, uncrease everything, and then divide one more time. That'll give you a nicer fall off. So that's basically how I did that armor. And then going back to the alphas here, so if I wanted to put bumps on here, instead of doing the project mesh, what I did was we can go in here, we'll grab an alpha. So like what the question was, here's a round alpha, and you go in here to alpha, modify, and then you want to do horizontal and vertical tiles. If you do this, it's going to keep them in a square. It's not going to expand the alpha horizontally or vertically. It's just going to keep them square. So it will squish them. So if you want to keep them circular, keep the H and V the same, 2 and 2, and then it'll keep them circular. However, if you just want to do vertical tiles, you're right, it is going to squish. One way around that, maybe, let's do this. So I'm going to go out of edit mode, hit Control N. We're just going to grab a cylinder primitive, drag it onto our canvas, go into edit mode, turn on polyframe, let's say make polymesh 3D, and we're going to go through here and we're going to make our own alpha. So we're going to go from the top here. Now if I just capture this alpha, it's going to be faceted, right? So we can go through here. We're going to, again, turn on dynamic. That's going to kind of average our verts. let's go through here to our crease and we'll say, just run this crease here, and it's gonna look at all your angles, and it's set at 45, so anything greater than that, this 90-degree angle is bigger, it's gonna go ahead and crease that for me. So now we're getting a dynamic preview, nice and smooth. Now if we wanted like a softer fall off, what we could try and do is, again, ZModeler brush BZM, hover over an edge, and we're just gonna put a big old bevel edge loop complete on here. We'll do Shift D to turn that off, and that'll give us a softer fall off. So if I hit D here, now we get a little bit of a softer fall off from here to here. If you're getting scalloping on the top here, you can kind of see it. It gets a little gross up here. Just go back in your ZModeler brush, insert single edge loop, and you can put in a little control loop here to kind of contain that scalloping to a little bit of a flatter surface. Another thing you can do, let's undo that a couple times. So I'm going to say insert single edge loop, hold down Alt to delete that edge loop. I'm going to put a big bevel on here. So bevel edge loop complete here. Alternatively, you could also say insert single edge loop, put one here on the top, and then hold down Alt and just kill that one. And then you can go in here and say insert multiple edge loops, interactive elevation. And then now you can go through here and we can just kind of pull and round off this corner here. If you want to make these the same polygroup, Control Shift Tab, Control W. These came in creased automatically. I don't really want that, so I'm going to say uncrease all. That's over here in your crease menu. And then now, when I hit D for dynamic, very, very soft fall off. We still get some scalloping, so we'll go ahead and we'll fix that. This time we could say, you know, inset polygroup island. If we do polygroup all, inset polygroup all, it's going to inset everything that's that green polygroup here. So sometimes that comes in handy, sometimes not. So I'm going to say inset polygroup island here, and that way this is all by itself. I can just go through and inset this. So now when I hit D for dynamic, it's a very smooth fall off. So now when I capture, I'm hoping this is the case, I can go in here to alpha from mesh, and then I'll go ahead and capture a nice, you know, gradient around here. We say okay, and there's our alpha. However, we want them stacked, right? So everybody hold your breath, because I don't know that this is going to work great, but we'll try it. So I'm going to hit W, I'm going to hold down Control and start dragging out. So when you hold down Control and start dragging out, it's going to give you a copy of a mesh. And in fact, if you hold down Control and then let go of Control and keep dragging, it's going to keep copying this out. There is a new Interpolate Stroke that's kind of neat. So if you look up Stroke Interpolate in ZBrush, you'll play around with that. In this case, I'm just dragging out copies. So now I have stacked versions. I'm going to hit D for dynamic. And then now if I go in here for alpha from mesh, it'll go ahead and capture my round alphas. And there we go. So now if we go back to my armor here, and I wanted to, now here's something. Right now it looks smooth, but if I do Shift D again, that's just dynamic turned on. It's just a dynamic preview. Generally speaking, 99.999% of the time, I just use dynamic preview. I try to keep it non-destructive so I can always go back in here and be like, you know what, I want to use my ZModeler brush to, you know, inset polygroup island again, and then Q mesh, polygroup all, hold down Shift and pull out, and then, you know, I've got a little bump on there, right? I could do the exact same thing for this, you know. So if one instance, if I wanted to go through here and be like, okay, let's put a little bump on the back, and that's supposed to give you the idea that something could be in there, like, you know, when you see a bump on a hood and it's got a hole in it, and it's got you know, it radiates heat or something. There's probably something underneath it that's functional. There's a reason for that to be. I don't know that I went that deep in my brain for the bison, but a little bit. So inset polygroup island here. So I'm just putting an edge ring around here, and then again, Q mesh polygroup all, hold down Shift, pull that along the surface normals here. Now you're going to see Q mesh polygroup all of these have the same polygroup, so I can move them all at the same time. If I don't, back over to polygroup island. There we go. Hold down Shift and then D for dynamic, and that's one way you could do it. This one can get a little bit tricky. If I hit W and Control tap a polygroup, that'll mask just this polygroup, and then I can squeeze this in. Let's go ahead and mask this out. So if I wanted to shrink this in a little bit more, totally doable. So there we go. Alternatively, you could also use an alpha. So in this case, if I go to my standard brush here, let's go ahead and say standard brush clone. Change this to drag rect, and we'll just grab that alpha. Now, if I start dragging this out now, it's going to be pretty low res, because remember, it's dynamic geometry. It's not real, it's just giving you a preview. So if you want this to be real geometry so you can start dragging high resolution stuff through it, geometry dynamic apply. So now we have real subdivisions. It's not great. Like, I would say use this as a last resort, because what's going to happen is if you say, okay, I want to drag on an alpha. Okay, great, it worked great. And then you're like, oh, okay, now I want to go over here and cut in geometry. Well, now you have subdivisions. So now it's going to, you can freeze, and it's going to be a pain, right? So just be really careful when you start applying subdivision levels that you really want to apply subdivision levels. So again, we've got actual geometry here. So when I drag these alphas out, you're going to see it's going to start fading around the sides. So just go in here to focal shift, -100. That's that little center ring. It's pushing it out towards the end. So it's a fall off essentially. So you can push that all the way out to the end of the brush. So that way your alpha comes in exactly as you think it should. If it's not enough resolution, Control D, subdivide one more time. You can push this in. Another really awesome thing, 2021.7 new feature. What I would used to have to do in the past would be like, okay, drag it out. Oh, these are too heavy. Go in here, adjust your Z intensity down, drag it back out. Oh, it's too light. Go back in here. Or you know what? I want them to push in. Z sub. There we go. Now what I can do is I can just pick any Z intensity I want and then immediately go in here to adjust last. And then I want to push them in, push them in. You want to pop them out more. No problem. You were always kind of able to do that using layers down here, but this is so much easier. And in fact, if we have, say we're popping in an alpha here, and an alpha here, and an alpha here, and it's like, oh, you know what? I want them all to change their height. Just go back in your history to where you don't have anything. Control tap that point in history. Oops, sorry. Control tap that point in history, go all the way forward. And now when you adjust, let's see, undo. Sorry. And our history line got a little, let me see if I go back here. Edit, delete older, undo history. Perfect. So now we're going through and we've stamped here. So I'm going to go back to this point in history, Control tap that point. And then when I go forward, adjust last, we'll adjust all of them. And that works for masking, that works for Polypaint, and that works for sculpting. So super handy for that type of thing. Sorry, I'm behind now. Let's see. Okay, so that was scale's not appropriate squish. Yeah, so that would be how you can create alphas inside of ZBrush. You can always go into Photoshop, make your stuff, and then import it in just under here, under alpha. Import, and you're good to go. Pre-drag says about polygon used for characters game might change once you see UE5 using skeletal meshes with unlimited polyres. Skeletal meshes with unlimited might be a little bit tougher. As soon as you add a joint and weighting, all of a sudden those verts start carrying a lot more information than just a static mesh sitting there collecting light data. So easier, I think, I mean, don't quote me on this, I'm not an engineer, but seems to me for a static mesh prop where you can be like, 1 billion polygons in UE5, a lot easier for a rock sitting there than for something that, being driven by a bone, joint data and weighting information and animation and draw calls and all that stuff combined. Then you start seeing, hey, you know what? Maybe not so unlimited. So whenever bones start coming into the equation, yeah. Cool, thanks, John. How do you manage verts after you merge down the subtools? For example, to demonstrate, if you take a cylinder and split them into and remerge them, the verts are separate. Normally in traditional software where you have merge by distance, what's the alternate in ZBrush? Please help. It's still there. You can do the exact same thing in ZBrush. So for example, if you have a cylinder edit mode and you have make polymesh 3D and it's like, okay, I got a group here and a group here. So Control Shift drag over something, Control W to visibility. Let's go ahead and turn off that history there. So you have all these different polygroups, right? And then you go down here and you can say split to group split. There you go. And now they're all separate subtools. And then you want to merge them down, right? As you start merging, if you're underneath merge, if you just have weld turned on, it'll go ahead and weld points. So now I don't know if it works with merge visible. Merge visible is weld on, let's see. So if I do merge visible, that'll merge everything together. And then here's my merge result. And if I go in here and smooth, yeah. So as long as you have weld turned on, it'll merge them. However, I don't I'm not a huge fan of having that turned on. You can do it manually as well. So if I have this here, it's like, you know what, I want to merge. So this top, I'm going to hold down Shift, bent arrow, shoot it to the bottom. Alt tap this one, Shift, bent arrow, shoot it to the bottom. I know these two subtools are right next to each other now. So if I want to merge this one down on this one, I can go ahead, and again, I can say weld and merge. So it'll weld them. However, I can also merge them together. Are they welded? Let me see. D for dynamic. Okay. Sorry, dynamic. So D and Shift D, you can see the polygons aren't welded. You can also go in here to geometry, modify topology, and there's a weld in here. And you're going to see there's a weld distance. So since they're right on top of each other, that weld should work fine. Just hit weld points. And then if we hit D for dynamic, they're welded. If they were ever, if they were ever a little further apart, so if we go through here and we say, for example, deformation, and we just run a noise in here, so now your verts are kind of like, they're not really that close together, and they're not welded at all, actually. You can always go in here to geometry, weld points. You can try clicking that, but then you can also crank up your weld distance, and if that's not quite getting them, turn that to closed circle, and that might reach out and grab a few more. So now you can see these are all welded. Alternatively, if it just isn't doing it, you can also go in here with ZModeler brush, BZM, hover over one vert and say stitch 2 points, U to U, and that'll do it. Alternatively, you can also go into your ZModeler brush. You can literally just say move by brush radius, and you can say there's an attraction valence in there. So if you just move one out, it'll just automatically snap. So it'll stitch them as you go through. You can just go through here and stitch them manually, literally just by moving them out, and it'll go boop, 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 boop. And there you go. So up to you. A couple different ways you can weld stuff together, but just if you're trying to make it like other programs, that weld is turned off by default because sometimes you don't want them to weld. So just turn that on. Division work for 30,000 or so. Yeah, sounds about right. Thank you, Morph3S, and thank you for showing up. He's a mainstay. They're a mainstay. What am I sculpting today? Nothing yet. What do you guys want to sculpt? Anything bugging anybody? Cool. Does 3D code do the texture job just as efficiently? That I haven't used that in about 10 years. Cool. Thank you, Jake. Knows the game got multiple shell. ZRemesh and decimation mesh for a lot of environment meshes. No retopo whatsoever. Yeah, environment stuff you can get away with murder relative to something you have to animate. That's another thing too, is when I'm animating these things around. Oh, hold on. Let me go back one. That was another consideration to make, is if I'm just animating, so this is the parented hierarchy. These are literally just parented meshes rotating on their axes that changed. That's all that was. Nothing special going on there. No rig or anything. And here, all these things were just hard weighted. You know, I didn't have to do, like, if I was doing any bendy stuff, then decimation probably not a great result or viable result. So ZRemesh would be a better one. So when you decimate something, so we take this here, and I'm just going to run a quick Dynamesh. So let's say this is our rock. So if you like sculpting rocks, one of my favorites, let's go in here to our brushes, and we're going to say, I'm going to PQRS trim, smooth border with a alpha triangle. Go through here, and now autosave. Go through here, and we'll just start making a rock. Also maybe a little bit of clay buildup, just to kind of rough up the surface a little bit. And then again, BTB, trim smooth border. Go through here, and we'll just kind of knock this down. You can also hold down Alt to kind of pull out to a surface here, and then just kind of push back in. So we've got our rock going. I'm going to Dynamesh as I go, and we'll raise our Dynamesh resolution up just a little bit. That for, if you're new to ZBrush, it's over here underneath your Dynamesh settings. Here it is in my custom menu, a little bit easier. We'll raise that resolution up and then re-Dynamesh. There we go. So now we're making a rock, and if I wanted to game res this, like so, we can go into our Orbs Cracks brush here. We can start carving in some big old slash chunks if we want to. Then we go back in here with our BTB, and again just kind of go through here and just push along these surfaces. We'll just take this crack and just kind of follow it through. We'll take this crack and kind of follow it this way. Just grab one of those edges and just like so. And then you do something as simple as just a standard brush, fairly high intensity. Tap L to turn lazy radius off, and then you can just kind of follow through and kind of break this up. So oops, probably want to hold down Alt. A little higher. There we go. Anyway, we have a rock. So if I wanted a game res for this, and you just want to, again, game res is all about just keeping that silhouette, how much of that silhouette you want to dial in. So that's where you go into the Z plugin, Decimation Master, Preprocess Current, and it's going to look at your surface deviation and go, well, all of this stuff seems important to the user, so I'm going to keep it. And then we'll say, okay, how many polygons is this allowed to be? Hey, boss, 10K? Yeah, that sounds right. 10K. Go ahead and say Decimate Current, and then there's your 10K. If he's like, are you crazy? 200.2 Decimate Current. And you're going to see it's going to maintain just the most changed things on your silhouette, basically. But we'll keep this. Let's say 1,000 is pretty good. So here's our 1,000 polygon rock. UV this. There's your game res. However, it's looking at what is interesting, or what, over here where it's nice and flat, nothing really changed, no polygons. Over here where you have a lot of surface deviation, a lot of polygons, which generally speaking for a static mesh is fine. However, if you were to go in here and say, okay, in game, what's going to happen is it's going to start bending around in game, or start animating like a snake or something. We'll say, so I went into the gear icon, choose bend curve, and then I can go through here in this little curve resolution. I can crank this up. If you're brand new to this and you're like, what is all that about? That's a ZBrush 20, it's the one with Earthworm Jim. 2018, what's new? Click on that, and that'll take you through a lot of the new Gizmo stuff. So check that out if you'd like. Anyway, so if it's going to go through and start animating, it's like, okay, great, let's start animating this guy. And let's say these are the bones in your animation program. You're going to see it deforms terribly because there's no verts there in order to allow it to move effectively, right? Well, that's where you got to start going in here and being like, okay, for animation, and again, you're probably not going to animate a rock like a snake, but just for demonstration purposes, you have your mesh here. And you know what? I'm going to say it's actually building in that. I'm going to go in here in my trim dynamic. We'll throw on a rock alpha here. Boop, 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 boop. Knock this down. That way it's not enticed to put in a polarized cap there. Okay, so now we want a game res for this, but we also want it to be like bendable for some reason, like a jello rock or something. That's where you start thinking about, okay, let's, I'm going to control tap this point in history with all these details, and then we're going to go through here and we're going to say ZRemesher, target polygon count of 5,000 is probably fine. Adapt the size. If you turn it down to 0, it's nice even quads, but it may not build in enough geometry to kind of maintain your silhouette in some areas. So I'm going to keep that up just a bit, and then we'll ZRemesh this. And this will be our animation-friendly game res. And this is going to give you even quads as much as it can over everything, build in the silhouette as much as it can over everything. And then that way, when it deforms, it'll be a lot more predictable. So instead of a bunch of big triangles, now this may be a little bit much, right? Like, okay, that's way too many polygons. So what you can do is we stored that point in history, right? So you can use project underneath subtool here. You have merge and split. Now you have project, and there's project all and project history. We're just gonna use project history because we stored that vert data in memory. So now if I go down here and we'll say project history, and that'll snap these polygons to our original high res. We can say ZRemesh or half ZRemesh. And then again, I'm just going to do a quick project history, and you can keep going half. Drop your adaptive size down to whatever you'd want. You can even use polygroups to determine, where you want your edge flow to go. But there you go. So now you've got a new game res, and now if we go through here and we say, we go in here and we do a bend curve, this will be a lot more predictable. So now as I bend this, you're going to see it obviously is going to deform a lot nicer than a bunch of decimated stuff, right? That's the basics. That's the thought process behind the two. Let's see, let me cut up. Off the top of the head, that dog is super cute. Let's see. A sort of pistol being modeled. Absolutely. I got you covered. So here's, it's a bit older, but here's a sci-fi weapon process. So this is 42 videos, the making of that pistol. Cool. Morph 3S. Yeah, I like it. It's 0 too. Boy, that'd be a tough one to say. Morph 03S. Yeah, using Maya for animating. Oh yeah, so I will say for animating, I haven't animated since college, and I had like, again, half a day, 4 hours maybe to go, okay, what mocap data? How do I rig this thing? How do I put this mocap data onto a rig? And then how do I take animation timeline and then put mocap data next to each other? So because the walk cycle is only 1 step or 2 steps, and he had to take 6 steps. So I had to take that mocap data and duplicate it 3 times and put locators where he's going to transition from one, basically continue walking, and then transition to another mocap where he's kind of idling there and then checking his watch. I was able to, again, haven't animated since college, and I was able to auto rig, retarget more mocap data, position that mocap data in the scene, transition between mocap data in half a day. So approaching idiot proof, which is pretty insane. I'll give him props. That's not, considering it's me and I'm terrible at animation and I was able to do that, that's saying something. For hard surface, I use hPolish brush to still get irregularities in my mesh. I even hold Alt to facilitate surface, but the surface still bumpy. Happens more in a circular area. Can please demonstrate just a 90-degree and curve polishing. So, regularities. So, if you're doing, so for example, let's take a cylinder, make Polymesh 3D. I'm going to go ahead and before I start dynameshing this or anything like that, I'm going to say crease, again using that crease tolerance which we did earlier, and then dynamic, and then also hit apply. In fact, one thing I can do, I can say ZRemesher, detect edges, since my edges are nice and crispy, and then I can say, let's turn on X Symmetry, and then I can just ZRemesh this depth size down to 0, same, and it'll go through and look at my edges and give me new geometry. If I want less, just hit half. So you can actually use this to go through and do whatever you want. And then why I do that is I can hit Control D a couple times, delete lower. Again, just nice predictable geometry. I can use the knife curve across symmetry. It's kind of weird. I thought it would give me the same polygroup on both sides. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, super useful for armor, knife curve, hold down spacebar, BRadius. So if I go through here and just use brush radius, it'll go through and slice out a panel. However, I want to go through here, and then before I let go, hold down Alt, it'll cut through. So then I can go through here and use this to kind of, and again, Alt tap twice. So now I can go through and cut in panel lines. So if I want this to be armor, just kind of sitting out here, I'm going to select all the yellow, geometry modify topology, delete hidden, ZRemesher half, depth size down to 0. I don't need detect edges on because the edges, there's not really any there. And now I have armor pieces. So at this point I can say, Q mesh, polygroup, all. Pop these things out. You can use panel loops too if you want to, but and just like we did before, inset, polygroup all here, and then we can say maybe pull these out, Q mesh, polygroup all, hold down shift, or push them in, whatever you want to do, and then just run like a crease PG, dynamic crease level of 2, smooth subdiv of 3, all the stuff we've talked about before already, but that way you can go through here and just get, that armor stuff. What are we talking about? Oh, hPolish. So here we have a cylinder, make Polymesh 3D. You know what? Let's do a cube because I can show more things with that. Cube 3D, make Polymesh 3D. And again, if I want nice predictable geometry real quick, ZRemesher same, depth size down to 0, detect edges. Boom, nice predictable geometry. So now if I go through here and I say Control D, a couple times and delete lower, and I want to start slicing through here, or BBA. I'm going to get rid of this point in history. Sorry. You know what I wish? I wish there was an edit, delete, object placement. Delete that thing. So basically I have X symmetry turned on. So now I can go through here. Let's go ahead and just turn light off. So I can go through here and I can use Bevel arc. So if you haven't seen these yet, these are a new brush here. So you can click on one side, click on the other. I can use this to bevel and arc in, and it's based on where you position, basically where you position your brush. There's also a little bit that happens with your brush modifier. So I'm going to get brush modifiers here. You can change that. Honestly, it's probably just easiest to go through here. Another thing too, you can go through here and you can say, you know, mask a couple things. You can do bevel flat, BBF, and you can say bevel flat, pick one side, pick the other, bevel this in, invert this, again, bevel one side, pick the other. Let's go ahead and make this, we'll pick a flat corner here, U to U, boom, there we go. So you can use bevel flat and bevel arc brushes, and you can use bevel arc brushes, BBA, brush, so B for the brush menu, B to narrow it down to all the brushes start with B, and then A is bevel arc, or you can select it. And then as you're going through here, you'll see it'll jump across that gap there. And you can use BBF to continue pushing. So if you wanted to like push this out, you can continue pushing this way. I kind of maybe prefer planar brush, BPL. You basically pick a spot on a surface like so, and then you just use the planar brush to continue, you know, there you go. That's a sculpting, not ZModeler, but if you're just kind of figuring out a shape, nothing wrong with that, right? Now hPolish. So let's say we're in here and I'm got this thing Dynameshed and I want to use hPolish on an interior edge or something like that. So we're going to go through here with our knife curve. We'll turn this on a little, oops, brush radius off. There we go. So I want to go through, and let's say it's kind of lumpy here. Again, we'll go down to our trusty noise here. Okay, we got a lumpy mesh. We want to start polishing this stuff, right? So we're going to go into our polish brush. First thing with polish brush is it may not be the best thing for the job. You know, if you wanted to polish a side, well, it might be better just to go in here to clip and say, you know, just kind of clip that surface back to polish it, right? Whatever makes the most sense. However, that may be a little tougher for some of these areas. Or if you're just kind of playing around, you want to polish something. This is where, on this side here, you can, so you want to, polish has two things. You do Alt, hold down Alt, or let go of Alt. Holding down Alt will pull up to a surface, letting go of Alt will push down to a surface. So when you're on a concave area, I usually cycle back and forth, so I'll kind of pull up and push down. And also look how big my hPolish brush is. If you go in here with a tiny hPolish brush and you're trying to like, hold on, let me contrast, negative contrast, just to kind of soften this noise out a little bit. So if I go through here with a tiny hPolish brush and I'm trying to like polish a surface down like this, you're gonna get a lumpy result. You go in here with a big old hPolish brush, hold down Alt, let go of Alt, and you just kind of go back and forth. And that's going to, you know, give you those nice broad surfaces in here. So if you want to do hard surface stuff too, so you use your clay buildup, you can kind of pull out to a surface and then go in here with hPolish. We're just going to polish the surface down. I'm going to let go of Alt and hold down Alt. Big hPolish brush. And then when you get into a tight corner here, again, it's going to start affecting the other surfaces, but you just hold down Alt to pull up and then let go of Alt to push down. And then as you alternate between those, you can start kind of dialing in those surfaces. However, again, it's not the best tool for every job. You know, it's okay, but there may be better options for you to refine surfaces. In fact, one of them may be stop sculpting. You know, if you just have a basic shape in here, then rebuild it. You know, use ZSpheres and rebuild this in a couple minutes, as opposed to meticulously going in here and giving yourself carpal tunnel trying to polish these shapes down when you can spend 5 minutes rebuilding it and then you have a nice mesh. Now, is it tedious? Sure, plotting points isn't anybody's favorite thing to do in the world, but it's still better than spending 15-20 minutes of scraping away your Wacom using hPolish to get a okay representation. Or clip, you know, go through here and clip all that stuff. So depending on what you're making, panel loops. Well, if you're ever in, again, if you just Google, but if you're on my channel, you just type in panel, and then panel loop presets plugin, hard surface geometry from Polygroup it, uses panel loops maybe. Tech suit ribbing, that uses some panel loops here. Trying to remember, I think I don't really go into panels that much except for in my ideation course. So panel loop. I think in the panel loop presets I talk about panel loops, like basics. So here going through and slicing, and then panel loops and how to adjust panel loops here. But yeah. Cool. When I split mask a section for hard surface modeling, how do I make the edges clean? So if you're in here, it's like, okay, I've got this, and I'm going to hold down Control, go, let's do this. So this is a little bit funner. You can go in here to mask pan and throw in an alpha, take that focal shift down to -100, and then as we go through, we can kind of drag this out, but you can see it starts, you know, on a surface. You know what? Let's do this. Cylinder, make polymesh 3D, crease, divide a couple times. And you know what? I don't like these polarized caps, right? Well, ZRemesh to the rescue. X symmetry turned on, detect edges, half, depth size down to 0. Give me new polygroups, give me new geometry up here, much nicer to sculpt on, right? Subdivide a couple times, delete lower. And then if I want to go through and, you know, do whatever we were doing before, love that knife curve brush, have at it. However, the whole point of this was, what was the whole point of this? Oh yeah, hard surface modeling and then using mask. So if I had the polarized cap up there and I dragged an alpha over it, it'd look terrible. And the reason why I went into a cylinder is because what if I wanted to put some text on here? Usually, like I said at the beginning of this show we're doing, I would do it in the texture. If it's not going to break the silhouette, then just do it in the texture. It's a lot less destructive. However, if you're going to 3D print it, kind of has to be in the model. So in this case, if I go in here to my alphas, and we go in here to military, we're going way back in time. We're going 10 years back in time to that original mech helmet. I've got some circle stuff with some stuff written. So if I grab this alpha, just double tap it, I'll throw it into my alphas. I'm going to take my standard brush. No, you know what we're going to do? Hold down Control, swap this alpha out with the circle text, switch this over to drag rect. So now if I take this, turn off X symmetry, and I try to drag it out, number one, we don't have enough resolution. Subdivide one more time. So now, as we're dragging this out, we're having to really like, I gotta position this exactly and I have to know exactly where to drag from. It's total pain, right? BT, Transpose Smart Mask is what you're looking for. BTM, Transpose Smart Mask. Now, it's a transpose thing. It's not a gizmo thing. So you gotta go up here and hit Y or toggle that button off, and now you have a transpose line. This is a special one though. This is Transpose Smart Mask. So we're gonna load in that circle text. And then now when I hold down Control and use this, I can use my space bar to move it around. So now I can go through here and position this text exactly where I want. And, you know, it went all the way through. So we'll say, turn this alpha off, mask pin, we'll hold down Control Alt, we'll just unmask all this. So we have our text up here, right? However, if we go through here and we say, we want to do, now this is going to be a bad example, but I'll show you anyways. We want to pop this text out as its own mesh. Well, a couple million different ways to do this. One way to do it is to go down here to your extract, and you can say extract based on masking, and you can say, you know, just hit extract, and that'll extract this mesh out. It kind of does it, but of course this is very complex. If I was to actually do this, what I would, if I wanted, okay, I'm going to go off on another tangent here. Sorry, this is a grab bag episode. It is what it is. So we're going to go through here. We're going to make a star. I'm going to go in here to my text here. So Z plugin. You can bring in your own SVGs, or you can make text here. So it's text in 3D vector shapes. We're going to say new text. I'm going to say Meki style text. You can make this, you know, whatever you want. Pick a font. And you can also go through here and you can say, change the depth, change the spacing, change the bevel on here, the bevel resolution if you want to, but you can also do that at the manually. Also, you can turn off adaptive to get a little bit easier, more even geometry. So if we like this, we have our text here, and because the geometry is adaptive is off, we can go through here. Let's hit Y to go back into gizmo mode, and then if we go in here to like bend arc, and we start using these to kind of bend this arc and then change the radius here, you can use this to kind of stamp geometry a little bit better. So for instance, B, create insert mesh brush new. Go back to what we were working on, and we can say, just drag this out. Oops, sorry, delete lower. Drag this out here, and then go ahead and say split mask points. Go in here and say bend arc. We're going to say bend it this way, change that radius, move this up. There we go. So we have Meki style text. And then now I can say move this below, say subtractive mesh live boolean. Now I can literally just punch this text in very clean, right? Like so. So if I'm going to do that, and that could be any shape, maybe modeling it using live booleans is better than something else you might be trying to do. However, let's go back. Let's delete this out of here. That's not really the question. The question is mask pin, drag rect, and we want a nice alpha edges, right? So we'll go through here, and we have a mask. The edges aren't that great. So one thing you can do is you can extract and you can play around with those settings. You can also go in here to geometry, edge loop, mask border, and that'll slice through the text. So, you know, one thing to consider is if you don't want to destroy what you're working on, just duplicate it off, go into solo mode, drag out a mask, go in here to edge loop, mask border, and then now you have, you know, this thing cut out. Did it do a great job? No, but you can actually fix that. First of all, I think we need a little bit more resolution. Sorry. And then hold on, control. There we go. So we have a little bit more resolution. This is going to be problematic because it gets real thin in there, but we can give it a shot. So again, edge loop, mask border, or you can just hit Control W. If you just hit Control W, it's just going to turn these polygons into geometry. But either way, it's giving you kind of a faceted line, right? Well, there's one thing you can do. If you have a mask in here, you can go over here. Instead of panel loops, there's a group sloops over here. We'll turn this down to like 3, and there's a polish on here. So when I group sloops this, it's going to go through and cut. It's going to do polygroups, isn't it? Undo that. Let's hit Control W, make this all one polygroup. Drag this mask out, hit Control W, so we have a polygroup there. Again, oh, that mask is just too thin. Well, here's another thing you can do. You can go down here to masking, and you can grow and then sharpen. So if I Control tap, that'll blur, and then Control Alt tap to sharpen, and that'll kind of smooth it out. Of course, that may not be what you're looking for. So again, going back here, we'll hit Control W, just gives it a new polygroup here. Let's make that more obvious. Let's turn off a line, but it's aliased, right? Well, you can use groups loops to go through here, and with that polish turned on, it'll give you loops around this. So now you have nice smooth lines, and if you want both of these, just Control Shift drag, like so. Another option, and if this is like, if you really, really want to control, and I'm giving myself a very, very bad scenario here. Again, we'll go, so here's our mask, Control W to make that. I'm gonna hold down, hit the comma key, go in here to brush, smooth, MMNOPQRS. There's a smooth groups option. So now when I go through here and hold down Shift to smooth, it's going to smooth the polygroup lines through here. So you can literally manually go through and smooth these out. You can also go down here to masking, and you can say just mask my polygroup border. Nope, mask my groups border here. And then I can Control tap to invert that. Let's do this. Mask by groups border, grow, Control tap to invert that, or hit the inverse mask. And then now I can go to here to deformation and then do a polish by features. And that'll allow me to polish. A feature is basically a crease or a polygroup border. So now I went through there and just used that to polish these here. So now I have a very clean, oh, I forgot to unmask these areas here. That's okay. I have a very clean cut around here. So if I wanted that to be separate geometry, no problem. Say delete hidden, go through here. I'm gonna grab a little piece of this one, Control Shift A, Control Drag, Alt, Control Shift A, and grab that one too. There we go. Geometry Modify Topology, delete hidden, and now we have this piece of geometry. You can try ZRemeshing it. You can try turning it into a Boolean. You can extract it if you want thickness. If you just have geometry sitting here, you can, instead of masking, you can also extract just from visible geometry. So there you go. And then we can say accept. So now you have visible geometry. Again, you can turn this into a live Boolean, like so. So now you can kind of, whatever you want to do. A couple different methods for doing that. Cool. Glad you can make it. Kitsune Fox. Mike, could you please explain again the order of learning from your videos? Are the paid ones the same as free ones? Should we move around YouTube or ArtStation? It's kind of up to you. Basically, I have an old Intro to ZBrush course. It's like through ZBrush 4R7, these ones down here. And then from there, if you start going through ZBrush 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, what's new, you're basically caught up. ArtStation also has, if you have ArtStation Learning built into your ArtStation subscription, here's another Intro to ZBrush course. Now this one stops at ZBrush 2019. So 2020, 2021, you'll just have to watch the What's New. Those are free. The most comprehensive course that I have is the Intro to ZBrush for Concept and Ideation here. And this is like 300 and I guess I can, I don't know, let's look. YouTube, Google Docs. This one is like 7 units. I haven't updated it for 0.7 just yet, but I will. So yeah, so this is several, a lot of hours through here, and a lot of different things. So this covers a ton of stuff. Not everything, but a ton of stuff in ZBrush. So if you're into that, go for it. If not, then the What's New series is probably a good enough bet, or just Google. Yes, the alt with the knife brush is awesome. I use that all the time now. Yeah, you're here, man. You made it to the show. What will Bevel Brush do on an organic surface? Well, we have our Chihuahua. Did I ever? Oh yeah, I did go through here. So basically, those bumps on the back were me just dragging an alpha and creating the bumps on the back. There's actually hard surface stuff too. So again, I usually take my standard brush and pop these off. If you click the comma key and go into your alpha menu, ZBrush comes with some hard surface stuff in here, so you can kind of dive through. Of course, we already know how to make our own alphas. We went over that earlier. So you can go through here and you can grab one of these here, and then you can just kind of pull through your mesh. If you want to also, some things what I'll do is alpha, modify, and then we'll turn on blur. There we go. So just blur the heck out of it. And that way, get a nice soft fall off. And again, remember, adjust last. Go through there and punch in exactly what you're looking for. Cool. Feature called Preserve Edge. Thank you, pre-drag. Also used for polishing. And in fact, there's I don't use this a ton, but some people do. Clay polish. You can mess around with those settings and when we're talking about hPolish stuff. Could this polishing techniques be used in scan model cleanup? Sure. I do have some scan model cleanup in here. This one, photogrammetry basics. Also, there's photogrammetry basics kind of setting this up. However, in ZBrush 2020, what's new in here, we actually used that to show off the new Xtractor drag dot and drag rack. And I actually used this recently for a Ninja Turtle scan data. I guess I can load that up. Let me kill this real quick and we'll restart ZBrush. Oh, thank you. Oh, lifesaver. So, for example, let me load this up. Oh, I guess I can show you. So, this is the Xtractor brush cleanup here. Wait for it. There we go. So if you ever have scan data and is missing data and you have data that you can kind of copy paste from your model, you can use the Xtractor brush and Xtractor drag dot. The reason I bring that up is semi-recently, let me see. Ooh, I don't know if I have an exact. Michelangelo. Let me see. Human painted. Let's see if I have a version that's. And this might shock some of you. Let me see. Does he have? No, he's all. That's all deleted. Sorry. Let me go one back. Oh, and it's not remembering my folders. That's a 2021.7 bug. Let me copy paste this. Sorry. Streaming, aluminum PQR S. I know my ABCs. Copy. 8, 7 skin detail. Okay, I think this is it. So basically, I went through and I projected. Body detail, and I did it required quite a bit of cleanup here, but if I go in here to texture, just to kind of show you what I'm talking about, what am I talking about? Texture on. I'm going to transfer this texture to, let's go again, let's go here into Skin Shader 4, and we're going to go in here to, what are we doing? Align cursor to surface, material, modifiers, Skin Shader diffuse. There we go. Sorry. Okay, so we've got this, and it's basically a texture map. I'm going to transfer this texture map to the Polypaint here. So we're going to say Polypaint from texture. MRGB mode needs to be turned on. Ta-da! So now, if I needed to get rid of, some of this, we have the body in here. So here's basically, again, this hasn't been cleaned up. There's a couple steps after this, but here's all the. If we turn off the Polypaint here, you can see it's basically transferred. Oh, actually it hasn't transferred it yet. Sorry. Anyway, I'll show you. There's transferring the details from the texture and the original model to this. In fact, let's go over here to the layers. I think that's, okay, yeah, skin details. We'll turn this on. We'll hit bake all. There we go. So now if we turn our Polypaint back on, and again, skin shader, there we go. So now we have our skin details matching our Polypaint, which was taken from scan data, basically. But if we wanted to clean this up, like you see, well, he has these underwear on here, so we can go through and we can use the Xtractor brush. So B, X for Xtractor, and then we have an Xtractor standard type, and then dot, and then drag rack. So I'll do the standard type for now, and essentially what you can do is you can hit G to sample one area, and then just drag across, and it's going to sample not only the textures, but also the height information. It's going to store an alpha in there. So you can use this as kind of a texture and cleanup for your model as well. Of course, you probably want to go through here and smooth this out first, and then use this as a cover-up pass. For example, so if we go out of here and we say turn off our Polypaint here, and we say, let's go back in here to start a material, and we'll say geometry, we'll drop down to like something level 5, and then 4, there we go. So again, we're going to do a little bit of cleanup. We don't want that all built in there. And it's just a little bit easier to drop down in subdivision levels and do a little bit of cleanup. So that way we're getting rid of the larger shapes, secondary shapes, and then finally to the really, really fine shapes here. So now we have skin detail, and then we have Polypaint information that we also want to replace. and then we can use that, use our Xtractor brush that we use, BX, and it should have stored, yeah, it's still stored in there. So then now I can literally go through here and replace that skin with new skin. Also useful for this, then I'll type of cleanup too. So we can go, here's another one. Oh, another thing too is if it's not enough resolution, you need to go in here to alpha, and you're gonna need to say, if you turn on from brush, you'll see the alpha width is set to 128. You can set that to 256, 512. Careful, it starts ballooning really fast. Like the higher you make this number, the more texture information, pixels, and height information in pixels that it's gonna pick up. So something to keep in mind. But yeah, that's one way you can go through and quickly clean up from the original scan data. But anyway, this is the, let's go ahead and turn this off here. Couple different scan wrap. There we go. So again, a little bit of a nightmare fuel. However, once it's all cleaned up, I can just go ahead and load in. Paste. And I haven't gone through and done the Ninja Turtle part yet, but wait for it. There we go. So now, again, human textures. So he's not green just yet, but he has been cleaned up. All his nubbins are deleted. Here's all his nails are cleaned up. Any stuff that was kind of a little iffy has been, cleaned up. So now he's just a weird fleshy Ninja Turtle thing. Louis says, I've shown ZBrush. It's impressive how old are you from ZBrush? Probably about 17 years I've been using ZBrush. Previous question, does 3D Coat do this texturing job just as efficiently? That I don't know. I used 3D Coat 10 years ago. You have to ask the 3D Coat guy about that. It's cool to see your stream popping on my YouTube while I'm opening ZBrush. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. Of course. Thank you for being here. Art Search and Learning is free for the rest of the year. Excellent. Good to know. Cool. So there's a whole ZBrush series for you right on there. When you do hard surface, do you get ideas from other sci-fi projects for other mechanical engineering in the real world? Absolutely. What we went over in the very beginning, and in fact, if you go to, oops. So for that bison, for example, I used Alexander's stuff as just to kind of have in the back of my brain to be like, yeah, these are cool ideas, can I use some of this? And obviously mine was a little more 1950s language. So what I ended up, I didn't really use this, but just kind of keeping this in the back of my mind. Let me see. Vehicle components. What else we have? If you really wanted to get into it and you wanted to do something like, let me see. Because one thing I did consider doing is like making the bison so it had like a chassis that held a seat that had like reins that the little robot guy could sit in the front. So he'd be like a horse and buggy bison that he could control, or maybe not even reins, but like a little joysticks or something like that. I didn't have enough time, but there's always tomorrow. Load this back up. But essentially, while you're going through and doing this, taking notes. I'm trying to find my notes actually. There was also terminology. There's kit bash, organization. There's lightweighting, mechanical terminology and examples. There's a H point. Yeah, so always keeping in mind like different manufacturing guides, and for example on the lightweighting stuff, I kept it old school, like 1950s Fallout style. So this type of stuff, as soon as you go over here into this type of lightweighting, this generative design manufacturing, they weren't doing this in the 50s. So I kind of kept it more to this type of lightweighting just because that's the style, and it kind of fit the brushes that I was using more. You know, using the Bevel art brushes for this type of stuff probably wouldn't have been all that useful. So that kind of determined, like I'm demoing these features, this is the type of style I'm going to go for, just because I think it'd be easier. But yeah, you know, for, you know, why these things are punched in and working sheet metal in ways that they are worked for additional support and stuff like that. Always good to have in the back of your mind. You know, kit bash organization, different joint types, you know, are always good to have. So it's all good to have. I'm not great at it for sure, but I don't do a ton of it. I agree. That pink Ninja Turtle, a little bit weird. Better for retopologizing. ZSpheres are using ZModeler with new function extruded edges. I'm faster with ZSpheres, so what he's talking about in here. So ZSphere topology, again, this is one of those things where if you're just kind of looking and you're like, what does that mean? This little search thing here. Topology. So this is, here's the new extrude topology. Here's ZRemesh topology. Here's ZSphere topology and cleanup. So there's a bunch of different topology stuff. However, in ZBrush 2021, oops, there was, and 2021 is a huge playlist, so I apologize in advance, but intro to ZBrush 2021. No, not demos. 2021, what's new? Here's the whole playlist in here. And if you do a search here, Control F for topology, there's an example. That's just a demo. But if you keep going down, here's ZModeler Edge Extrude Retopology Techniques, Dynamic Climb. Probably this one's what the best one to go to. So I'll link you. Goodness gracious, come on. There we go. 35. Close. View on YouTube. Index 45. That's what I'm looking for. It would be basically using edges to kind of go through it. So they're all kind of packed in there. How did you do that scan? Basically a 1024 scan model wrapped to my ZBrush Ninja Turtle. Fairly straightforward. In fact, let me see if I can find his page here. I'll show you. This guy has all sorts of tutorials on that. There we go, James. You want to know how? Basically, this one is a nice overview of how you can do it. Really straightforward. No texture painted in Spotlight for that. That was just straight transfer. Bison process through Houdini for the final mesh. That was just decimated in ZBrush and Auto UV. But you absolutely could if anybody's interested in the Houdini stuff. That'd be my page, which is nowhere. Sorry. Yoink. Here, so there's Houdini Auto Game Res, and then there's the Houdini Auto Game Dev Toolset. So that's basically taking your ZBrush mesh and throwing it through Houdini for automated game res and UVs. So it's kind of cool. Bop, bop, beep. Going through here. A little bit more control maybe, but again, I just did it in ZBrush real quick. Took me a couple hours, but I just kind of went through subtool by subtool as needed. Combined, Dynamesh for the envelope, decimated down, exported, high, low, auto UV, bake and substance, texture it real quick, throw it into V-Ray, and animated in Maya. I had V-Ray, just figured I'd use V-Ray to render it in Maya and then call it a day. Yes, long dress. So it kind of depends on what I would be using it for, but an easy one. I've done a couple examples here. Pattern dress creation, clothing pattern dress creation, custom spotlight dress creation. These ones here. So 11, 12, and 13 in ZBrush 2021 is what you're looking for. I'll find it for you real quick. So playlists, here's how you can navigate my channel. We need to go to create a playlist. You won't need to do that. And then down here on ZBrush 2021, what's new, view the full playlist. And even in here, we could just do a search for dress. So 11, 12, and 13 is all about long dress creation. Or dress creation. Then all you would need to do for a long dress creation is just pick a long dress pattern or extrude that out and drape. Fanboy said he was your student on Stylist League stream, Hannibal. Hey! Yes, and the Ninja Turtle I did was for Stylist League. So when I'm done, I'll post links to all. I mean, hell, I can do it now. There's no, let me see. Sorry, I got hot coffee on me. I'm typing around my coffee. There we go. So if you want to see my Ninja Turtle stuff, there we go. Those are the Ninja Turtle episodes I was in, and you can see me sketching in 2D and sketching in 3D, basically, is all I did. Greetings from Round Rock. That's like, well, I'm in South Austin, so that's quite a ways away from me now, but I used to live in Round Rock. The expert your bison for baking substance, do it part by part or one whole FBX? One whole FBX. Well, one whole FBX per section. So like the hood, armor, cloth, wires, accessories, and structure. These were all combined and then exported as one FBX each with different material IDs. So let me show you that. Explain the stager a bit more. I don't think I'm using it correctly. Yeah, so that would be, and I can use this as a stager demo. Let me go ahead and open. There you go. So while I'm opening that, this one can get thrown a little bit here. So for example, we have this piece here, and we'll go to, so just real quick, these are my different texture sets, and so these were all imported. So if I go in here and say, just show me this one. So these are, oh, let's wait for it to load up the resolution. I guess it did. There we go. So there's, I guess I call them accessories, just a bunch of stuff on them. And then here's the armor. And this was all, again, oops, exported on through. And I'm also using the V-Ray material in here. So when I export it, I use the V-Ray export preset, and then I just plugged all that stuff in. So as I'm in my rendering, it's just happening on the fly, and then I can just set and dial my settings like that. Super easy. Didn't have to use my brain. It was all kind of done for me. So that's the good news. But anyway, yeah, these are all this. And then if I go through here, let's just do a quick, you know, I guess I can go in here to our ID. There we go. So this is the vertex color out of ZBrush for my high res, baked to my decimated low res, and then these are the vertex IDs, just so I can quickly apply things to all the armor or all the things. And if I, you know, it didn't always work out, some of the stuff I swapped around a little bit, but just for a quick first pass, using these material IDs to determine where all this stuff went on my mesh. But for stager here, so we're gonna have an object, and we can have two different stages with move, scale, and rotate. So the biggest thing is, I mean, it can work with any geometry, Dynamesh, subdivision geometry, all that stuff. And in fact, if you want a little bit of a cleaner walkthrough, I suppose, it's still in that exact same ZBrush 2021 what's new. However, it's all the way at the very bottom here. Let's go ahead and kill that. Here, like these last 84 through 91. So this is basically where all the new stuff starts, and you can see in this playlist over here, Stager is on 87. Video 87. So you can get, that'll just have maybe some more stuff in it. Anyway, so geometry, Stager, and we have home stage and target stage and switch stage. So home stage, we can say that's our home stage. Our target stage is gonna be where we want this thing. And you can non-uniformly scale something, but that always throws me off because it will build that non-uniform scale in. So if you like do this, it'll let you store that as your target stage, and then you can go through and switch your stage. However, if you're on this stage and you're like, okay, let's go in here with our clay brush, and you know, I'm going to kind of L turned off. Switch over here. There we go. Now you can see. So one more thing too, you know, so you can go through here and you can punch in a hole with clay brush, and then again, just use that adjust last, use it all the time now. Or let's do this. Standard brush, switch to drag rect alpha 06. So we can go through here and we can say, you know, drag this in, focal shift down to -100. So we say put in, let's hold down Alt, we'll put in a small one here, we'll put in a large one here. Control Shift 1 is interpolate. So that's underneath your stroke here. There's a new in ZBrush 2021.7 stroke count and interpolate and adjust last, all right, packed right in here. So we're going to say, you know, let's do 5. So now if I do again a small and then a large, and then we interpolate between them, it'll interpolate them. Now you're going to see there's that closed and open circle. Closed circle is just going to do it based on the middle. So these are all spaced out, but as it gets larger, they're going to be packed closer together. You can tell it open circle, and that, oops, let's do small and do large. Open circle interpolate will go through and space them evenly out. You know, it's not just based on the center, it'll space them out based on size. So it'll give a little more room for the big ones and less room for the small ones. So, and the mind-bending stuff from this one comes from, crank this up a little bit here, comes from stuff like, you know, you can do straight, oops, focal shift down to 0, straight line to curvy line, and then interpolate between those. Oops, let's do closed circle here. So straight line, curvy line, interpolate, and it'll interpolate like an anamorph between them. So of course you can also do that. This is one thing, it froze when I was demoing this, but you can, you know, BI brush insert industrial parts, hit M. So we can do, delete lower, we can do industrial parts, M, grab it, small, large, Control Shift 1, interpolate between them. And again, we have closed circles, so it's kind of packing them in there. So if you wanted to do insert mesh brushes that are the same, you can just hold down Control, and that'll make it the same size as your brush. So Control drag, and then Control Shift 1 to interpolate. And it should follow the surface normal, and it does. Ooh, this is weird. Let's try this. Let's see what's going on here. So snap, snap, Control Shift 1. Okay, that worked. So it follows the surface normal, and because it's the same size, it doesn't matter if it's closed or open, it'll do the same thing. So in this case, we probably want to drop our strokes count down, or we want to space them further apart. And I guess also, let's turn on perspective, that might be throwing it off. I don't know, maybe not, but so again, Control, hold down Control as you're dragging out, it'll make them the same size, Control Shift 1, interpolate your stroke between them, it'll follow the surface normal, and everybody's happy. What was I talking about? I think I forgot what I was talking about. Oh, stager, right. So, okay, so we have this thing here, and we've already set our home stage and our target stage, but again, you know, this could be your home stage, and then your target stage could be whatever, right? And then you can switch between them, so switch stage, and then again, just like anything in ZBrush we talked about earlier, hold down Control-Alt, switch stage. We'll just store that to Control-Alt-2, I suppose. And then now we can just use a hotkey to switch between those. So now while we're in the target stage, we can go through here and we can do BBF, sorry, bevel flat. And we can say, okay, on this stage, I'm going to go through here and we're going to bevel this off. And then I'm going to go back to my home stage and I'm going to do a BBA for bevel arc. And I'm going to, you know, go across here and we'll just do a, again, bevel brushes, use a nice big brush, just gets it done faster. We'll bevel arc. So we can make changes in this direction, and in fact, because it's easier, I can say X symmetry, tap X to turn that on, to go into local sim. So we have local symmetry across the local axis of this object. Sometimes you'll have a little bit of an error. If you start in the middle, you'll see it kind of does this. So I tend to kind of bring it out from the middle, and that'll give me a little bit of a better result. Your mileage may vary on that one. So now we're working across symmetry in this one, but then when we swap it over to where it's going to go, it'll carry those changes over and put it in there. Now you may be asking, can't we just have an instance where you can work on its own working plane for that object like in Modo? No, you can't, unfortunately. You can use, I won't demo this, but I'll give you another option. It's not the answer you're looking for, but it is another thing you can use. Gosh, was it in this one? Was it in 2021? Nanomesh, yeah, it was. Nanomesh axis symmetry sculpting. So I prefer the technique in video 52. You can use this to sculpt across an axis in one area and then have an instance of it update on the fly in another. So check that video out if that's interesting to you. But that's the basics of Stager. You can throw it off though. You can, in the target stage, I think, if you throw off the bounding box and then throw it back. No, that worked. What was I doing? I did something weird. I was like working on my target stage. No, that worked. Oh, if you're in your target stage and you turn it off and you do something and then you turn it back on and then you send it home. No, that worked too. You can get in a bad state for sure, but it's working on my machine right now. What are PC parts that take priority if I want ZBrush to run smooth as possible with millions of polygons? Probably RAM and CPU for ZBrush. We are running, I'm using the 3970X. Probably overkill for ZBrush specifically, but I use a ton of programs outside of ZBrush, so it does the job for a lot of different stuff that I use. If you want to see more about that specifically, I have here's my updated workstation here. So if you go down to the description of this video, you'll see exactly what I'm using. Did a Black Panther sculpt to make him into Star-Lord. I need to build the mask with the new update. Is it easier just to take the primitives and cut and paste using Stager plugin? I mean, if your model, if your model's posed, then yeah, I would say for you especially, if you're doing a lot of maquettes or a lot of you do a lot of pose stuff. So yeah, I would say do your mask here, and then you can use Stager to kind of flip it back and forth, or you can use that nano mesh technique. But yeah, that would be useful for pose stuff. Well, I haven't tried multi-map exporter or transpose master after the last update. Says your low poly Verbison. Oh, ZRemesh from ZBrush. Decimated. He's hard surface, so I didn't need to worry about him animating outside of just rotating joints, so just decimated it down. Can you use Stager to work back and forth on a T-pose character to a posed version? Maybe. Let's try. When in doubt, give it a shot. So I'm going to go into my comma key. We'll go into Tool, and I like working on the doggy. So we've got a dog here. No, I don't think it will, because these are just, it's basically our translation, rotation, and scale, and an axis in here. So with the vert, like if you're posing, you're changing verts. So basically, I mean, you can, but no. More accurately, no, you won't be able to. You can use layers for that, because that's going to give you a linear interpolation between. So we can go through here, we can say layers, and we'll say add a new layer, and we're recording now. So if I wanted to say, okay, here's my sculpting a symmetry. Oh, but this will be a pain. What you probably want to use is pose symmetry. So if you do go through here, you can like pose this dog out and say control drag up here and then tilt his head down and bend his arms back. Let's go over here to mask lasso. This is not going to be a great answer, but it will be an answer. So we're posing, sorry, broken leg. And then if we turn this layer off, you can see it'll again, linear. It's taking these verts and just moving them from one position to another. Just a linear interpolation between the two. However, if I go through here and I start sculpting, and then I turn this on, it will maintain that sculpt and move the verts because it's going to be additive. So you can add multiple, you can add more and more and more layers, and it will, you just got to be careful because again, it's all additive. So if you sculpt on one layer and then you put on another layer and you sculpt on that layer and you turn on another layer, you sculpt on that layer, it's going to add, keep adding those different changes. So technically, yes, you can go through here and like sculpt in Symmetry and then you can move it, those verts into position. Just remember that it's all additive. So I wonder if I go in here and sculpt, sorry, this is just gonna be an ugly idea. It'll kind of work, but essentially let's pose this into place here. So let's go through here and we'll really pose this out. Here, yoink, and oops, turn off X symmetry. So now we have a symmetrical model, but now he's all posed out, and we want to sculpt in Symmetry. So we'll say Bevel. That's where you can go in here to transform, and there's activate symmetry in the X, and then just turn on use Poseable symmetry. It'll find symmetry, and then now you can go through here and you can sculpt Poseable across the X-axis there. This is also, by the way, we do have this new ability in 2021.7 where, you know, you've got this masked out and it's all, is all posed, and then we say turn off X symmetry, go in here with masking or go in here with Polypaint, doesn't really matter. We'll say mask pin, star, focus shift down. So we're going to go through and we're going to mask, and that's going to mask all the way through our object here. So we've got a star on here. You can go down here now to masking, and you can say flip or mirror by Poseable symmetry, and it'll go through. And here's another trick too. If you activate symmetry and go ahead and say use Poseable symmetry, it'll store that. So now when I do either flip or mask by Poseable symmetry, it happens a lot faster because it doesn't have to go and do that. That, by the way, is all information that's in the new 2021 What's New series. It's all in there. So also polypainting. So if we go through here and we hold down, it's got our standard brush RGB turned on, yellow, and we want to turn off X symmetry because we're going to be painting through here, and we want to go through here and make our little smiley face. So you have multiple brush strokes here, so I can go back through to where nothing was painted. There we go. And then if I go all the way forward, I can do adjust last. It'll adjust last all those polypaint strokes like we were talking about earlier. You can also go down here to mask changed points, and because we stored that point in history, it masks all those points that we changed. And then from this point, you can say, you know, flip your mask. Although, okay, this gets into, again, this is all in the videos. You can see how it's masking based on Polypaint, based on RGB value. Turn that to open circle, and that'll mask everything that was changed, not just based on RGB value. Flip by Poseable symmetry, control tab to invert, and then even on the Polypaint here, you can say flip or mirror by Poseable symmetry. That'll go ahead and put that Polypaint and those strokes onto the other side, along with your mask. So it's all in there. Yeah, it does make some master. Stages to work back and forth, but yeah, that would be tougher. Poseable symmetry might be your best bet. Process series of videos, man, outreach, awesome stuff. Yeah, I would love to do more instructional videos, but I'm back to my real job today, so why not? Machine specs, yeah, I linked that just a second ago, so you get them all there. Third stage, it's home, target, and switch. So you have a home stage, you have a target stage, and the switch between them. That's the third button. Actually playing some games. If yes, what's your favorite? The last favorite game I played was Fallout 3. So that might tell you how much game playing I do lately. I was into Warcraft for a bit. Fallout 3. Yeah, it's been a while. How low do you decimate average? For what I was doing for the buffalo, I would get it down as long as it's not destroying. Basically what I'm looking at is a silhouette. If it's giving me the silhouette I want, that's what I decimate down to. I wasn't overly concerned. I needed to make it performant so I could get it into Maya and animate, but I wasn't concerned about like, oh, I need to get it to run an engine at 60 frames a second. I didn't care about that. So basically, as long as I was getting the silhouette I needed, that's what I decimated down to. But as low as possible, ideally. Group sloops, yeah, cool. Glad you like that, Scott. If you had to create a clothing, wanted to set fabric type and sculpt as opposed to texture, how would you approach it? In ZBrush, that's going to be underneath dynamics. So fabric type is kind of a firmness. So the lower the firmness, the more silky it is. The higher the firmness, the more leathery it is. And everything in between. Denim is probably a little firmer. Cotton's a little silkier. On top of that, if we're talking about, let's go in here. I like this dog, so we're going to keep it. Not terrain. We want to do a plain 3D here. And this is all in the 2021 What's New playlist, by the way. If you're brand new to ZBrush and you're like, what? Say what? And I already know. Let's do this. Delete here. Dog. Hold down Shift to smooth. Turn on that. Delete lower. There we go. So now, let's turn on Sculptures Pro. We have a plane here. I'm going to scale this plane down, like so. I'm going to go in here and we're going to say keep gravity on, gravity strength way down, collision volume turned on, inflate down to maybe not 0, but lower than 1. Run the simulation, and then I'll go ahead and simulate this cloth on the object, like so. Now, again, firmness way down will give you it'll allow those relationships between those verts to simulate based on the cloth algorithm to give you a very silky result. If we crank this up to 5, it'll give you a very leathery result. So that's a type of cloth type, right? So that's step 1. Now, as far as like what the cloth is made out of, there's a couple different methods you could use for that. You can go down here to turn on dynamic. Let's do smooth down to 0. Go in here to Micropoly. You can choose a knit. So here's knit. BCK for cloth hook. You can go through here and you can move this knit around, and this is a micropoly that you can convert to real geometry later, or you can go down here to, let's go ahead and we'll turn dynamic on, smooth subdiv. We do smooth subdiv up to 2 and then turn micropoly on with a type of hitch to here, weave here. There we go. So now you get, but this is all real geometry if you were to convert it. Right now it's not, it's just an instance, but it will convert to real geometry if you want to. So that might be not the best result or what you're looking for. You can go in here to surface, noise. And again, if I'm gonna do this on a texture and I'm gonna be texturing this, then I'm just gonna do it in the texture. I'm not gonna do it in ZBrush. But if it's for a 3D print and you have to do it in ZBrush, you can go in here and you can just load up. I'm not even sure if I have any tileable cloth alphas. Oh, maybe I do. Cloth. I got some tileable cloth alphas. So there's a knit pattern that's tileable. So I can go through here and I can say mix basic noise down to 0, and then alpha scale, crank this down, and the strength, like so. And we'll say this is set to UV. So now I can add a cloth type just by determining what type of alpha it is. So now we have a displacement map for that. So now, and it hasn't been applied to my object yet, so I can go through here. It's just literally just a displacement map texture, so I can turn it on and off as needed. So that's another option for you. I'm gonna change my, oh, you know what? I forgot to change the title. I hope it shows Michael Pavlovich Workshop. And change it to Michael Pavlovich Sloops. For an angular object, you use crease or edge loop near the crease side. Let's say you're going to export the object to another engine, Maya, etc. I like to use the creasing method in Maya. So basically, I would export my low res and then use creases in Maya. I would crease by normal angle, and then use the creasing tool to kind of go through and subdivide my geometry, because the Maya has, just like ZBrush, dynamic subdivisions, and then it has component creasing. So as opposed to building in a ton of edge loops, I'll just use creasing in Maya specifically. If I'm going to another program where that's not available, then yeah, build in your edge loops, export it. Or dynamic apply if you've got it built in. So like if you've got a Q grid on a really simple object, like initialize Q cube here. And for example, if we have like skin shader 4 dynamic turned on, here's smooth, but let's say we want to do Q grid coverage down. So we have like a beveled corner, or if we don't want bevels, we want chamfers. Here's a rounded corner. So this is not real. So if you export it now, it would just export this cube. If you want it real, let's take smooth sub down to 0, maybe 1. So if you want this to be real geometry we put into another program, then in this case, I would just hit apply. So now you would see that would be the geometry I'd export. However, if you're doing something like, let's see, here, Q mesh, here, Q mesh, and then we want to do a, let's say, bridge, 2 poly, connected poly, circle, curvature of 100, resolution 8, line to normal, triangle sides. Go through here, and then, oops, connected poly, circle. Yes, bridge connected polys. There we go, sorry. Group by normals, and then crease PG, crease level of 3, smooth subdiv of 4, Q grid off. So now we have, like, this is the result I want. But if I export this, this is what I'm exporting. I would just export this. And then again, in Maya, crease by normal angles and then crease. And then that's a result I would get in Maya, for example. Or if you don't feel like doing that, that's when you just hit apply. And then this is what you export to hold your edges and get you exactly what you're looking for. Not my favorite thing to do. Merge subtools and Z-wrap the whole Bison accessories and Bison armor. Does every subtool have its own UV tile? If so, isn't that difficult to manage in Substance? No, not really. Oh, I guess I have 2 versions open. That doesn't help. I guess I could have just opened that up, huh? All right, what's going on? Okay, that's just taking forever to close. No, you know, these are all of them. So we show all here, and we, you know, hide our armor, I suppose. It wasn't too much to handle. It's basically just 5 materials, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 materials. Everything baked out to 0 to 1, 4096, I think, for most of them. Auto UV'd, called it a day. Okay, good, excellent. How many characters you should have in your portfolio to apply for a job? As many as you can without going into, you know, you want quantity, or you want quality, not necessarily just quantity, but you also don't want to leave them questioning what you're capable of doing. I do have a blog about that. So if you go to my blog here and breaking into the game industry, there's a lot of stuff on portfolio in there. Tailoring your portfolio. Your mileage may vary. I don't know everything, but for what it's worth, I have some information in there. Turn the micronormal to real geometry, how would you do so? So that would be, again, if anybody wants to follow up, if you just go into the ZBrush 2021, what's new, and what you're looking for is micro poly. There's 18 of them. Fiber mesh Micropoly unweld. There we go. Micropoly versus micromesh, Micropoly basics. So video 40, we'll go into, watch this on YouTube. No, come on. Really? Oh, I am on YouTube. Boy, I'm hurting. But there's how you can convert that. But essentially all it is, there's 2 ways to convert it. Just like we did before, you can go into, here's dynamic, and we're going to say micropoly on. I can say Oxford. Whoa. Smooth sub div down to 0. Let's choose another one. There we go. So this is, again, just a preview. You can go in here and you can just hit apply, and now it's real geometry. Or you can go in here to where is that? Geometry, convert BPR to Geo. So if you hit BPR, it'll render, and then, oh, I guess you can't do that for this one. Some things like Remeshes and Micropoly, you can hit convert BPR to Geo. In this case, just hit apply, and that'll apply Micropoly to it. The order of learning from your videos, well, chronological order. What's new 2020? What's new 2021? Let's go in order, and that'll be the learning. And ArtStation and YouTube is the exact same thing. Whatever's easier for your eyeballs to look at. If you don't mind going through here and saying, oh, ZBrush 2018, what's new? You can do that. Or if you're YouTube savvy, which a lot of people aren't, you can go in here to playlists and you can dig around for, you know, I would say basically you're going to want to start with Intro to ZBrush, new and updated, and then from there go to ZBrush 4R8, what's new, ZBrush 2019, 2020, 2021, what's new. And that'll get you all caught up. Now, the order in which you watch a ZBrush video is kind of dependent on, for me anyways, what I'm making. So, you know, if you're picking something to make, going through all the new stuff, 99% of it may be irrelevant to what you're trying to make. So, but if you're just trying to learn ZBrush tools and techniques, that's fine. If you do want something more ordered, like that was mentioned before, ArtStation learning is free. So if you go down here to this guy here, there's an entire series right here, 16 hours, goes all the way to 2019. So you're not going to get everything out of it, but this is blocking out and accessories and organic hard surface. Just me basically making this little basketball player guy using a bunch of different techniques in ZBrush from start to finish. Yes, well, for the final FBX, for the bake, it was 5 FBXs, but inside of those FBXs could be hundreds of subtools if you needed to. And those could all be named separate. So when you go to baking, you can always go in here and you can say, what am I looking for here? Texture set settings. When you go in here to bake your mesh maps, you can set your baking to match by mesh name. So if you want, I mean, I'm trying to remember when the last time I did something like this was. Oh, you know what? The video we brought up earlier is the exact same. This is what I did for exact same process in the Sci-Fi's Weapon series. Go in here and look at decimating, Maya UV and export, painter, bake, and base mats. All of it is the exact same way I made that. So you can check that out. I want to use poly groups as an ID map. Do I need to bake it? How can I use them on Substance Painter? I usually do Polypaint IDs. So if you had different poly groups, for example, solo, Control Shift, we'll go in here and slice. So you've got all these different poly groups. You can go in here. I wouldn't necessarily do this, but you can go in here to Polypaint from poly groups and then convert that to a Polypaint, and then you can bake your Polypaint again. In here, when you're baking, you can say for your ID map, switch it to vertex color. You can do some fancier stuff with file IDs, I suppose, but this is easiest out of ZBrush for me. So vertex color. So you can do that. However, I don't like doing that because these colors may end up very close to each other. That's when I go in here to my simple color swatches. Swap this out here. So I'll have this loaded up over here on the side, and I'll go back, let's say go out of edit mode, go back to my dog. These are the different poly groups I want. So these are mathematically separated. So C to sample, fill, C to sample, fill, C to sample, fill, and then C to sample, fill. So now I know they're separate. Where that is I guess I can, let me see if I can find it for you. This is swatch. Simple color swatches, share, get link, copy link, done. There you go. You can download it there. Using MetaHuman for production at work. I'm playing around with it. I don't do anything at work. I'm a director, so the amount of work I don't do is astounding. Anytime spent uploading 10 wrong things you're doing wrong in ZBrush. I need to start working on that. The hardest part for that is thumbnails, because I got to do, you know, my selfie, and I need to get the lighting right, and I need to blur out the background. There's a lot that goes into those thumbnails to really make them clickable. Cool. All right, everybody. It's 8:14. I'm over time. Thanks so much for showing up. I had fun. That was a grab bag episode. Again, just a ton of stuff. Hopefully I answered as many questions as I could. Hopefully it all made sense. Gave you some resources. Again, thank you very much. Have fun. And, you know, the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway is just keep creating. The more stuff you make, the funner it gets, the faster it gets. It's just, that's when it gets really, really fun. So make stuff and then save it, move on. Make. Keep making stuff. It gets really fun, I promise. Thanks, everybody, and I'll catch you on the flip side.